16, 2010 has now been called to order. We will have the invocation by Dr. Mackey, which will follow with the pledge. Please stand.
Heavenly Father, we ask that you help us with this meeting and help us follow in your light what should be done for this parish and for this nation. We ask this always in your light, to be in your light, and to try to always fulfill what we find in you. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Madam Secretary.
Yes, sir. Mr. Engerpont?
Here.
Mr. Brame?
Here.
Mr. Collins?
Here.
Mr. Farnham?
Here.
Mrs. Griffin?
Present.
Mr. Hassan?
Here.
Mr. Landry?
Here.
Dr. Mackey is present. Mr. McMillan?
Here.
Mr. Scott?
Here.
Mr. Spell?
Here.
Mr. Stelly?
Here.
Mr. Sias?
Present.
Mrs. Trimmie? Here. And President Guidry.
Here. Thank you, Madam Secretary. We want to welcome everyone here tonight, and we want to thank you for coming out, and we'd like to ask if there's anyone in the audience that might have a cell phone. We ask that you would put that device to silence, and if there's anyone that has a pager, we would ask that you would also put that device to silence as well, so that we can conduct our meeting in an orderly fashion. At this time, I would like to ask for a point of personal privilege, and at this time, I will turn it over to Mr. Alan Wainwright.
Thank you, President Guidry and members of the jury. I want to say goodbye to Rita tonight in a special way. She's decided to leave our department, and she's been called to do some things and some family things, and she's leaving on the best of terms, I assure you. We're going to miss her. I wanted to make a few comments about Rita, if I can. It's been a wonderful two years and 3 months, I think, almost to the day. Rita came to us about a week before Hurricane Gustav, and she got here, and we were in evacuation mode. We got lucky with Hurricane Gustav, but I told Rita, I said, look, here's a lot of things you're going to have to do. We're fixing to be real busy. Good luck. I'll see you at the end. And she did a great job. Then we turned around and done it about 2 weeks later with Hurricane Ike. And she came to me and said, you know, I don't know how I'm doing on my 30-day evaluation, but you are not doing so good down here. So with that, Rita survived all that. She did a great job. Learned a lot, I'm sure, about how our operations run, but taught us even more. She handled a couple really high-profile cases. Animal Services is kind of like the gift that keeps giving. We had the cockfighting case, y'all might remember. We had a sword fighting situation with an animal was killed. It was a very controversial nationwide coverage on that. And a lot of other things. So Rita did a great job in leading our department through some very controversial big cases. On the internal side, she did a lot of things, too, while she was here that I'm very proud of. Number one, she helped us rewrite all of our animal ordinances. A very big step, taught us a lot, brought a lot of new insight to that. She helped redo and reestablish how we do rabies clinics. Her first year, she got to see the old version, and the second year, we were able to do a whole new method. I'm very proud of that, and Rita was instrumental in leading us through that. Closer down to the ground level in the euthanasia room, which is the toughest work environment that I can think of that the parish has, she brought a sense of calm and expertise, and taught our employees how to do it in a way that is the most professional method that it can be done, and very proud of that. Also, she did some smaller things like the adoption room in the cat area, where she changed the way we do it. She took the animals out of the pens and presented them in a method that they're loose and they're fun, and people are able to come in and work with them. I thought that was some very, very impressive things that she done. Overall, she improved the morale of the department while she was there. She created some teamwork. worked our way through a lot of tough hurdles there, but you know, I'm going to miss her a lot. One thing that Claude asked me to do when we were looking for a director was to find someone that had the balance between human rights and animal rights. And I've told Marita this a lot of times. I think she hit that balance quite well. That's not always a given in this arena. So we'll be looking for that kind of person again. All in all, it's been a very wonderful experience. I think most of y'all have had an opportunity to work with Rita one way or another. I hope she's done well. I know she's done well. And I want to wish her well in her future endeavors. And I know she'll be back to visit us. And I think we'll continue to see good things out of Rita. So thank y'all. Thank you, Rita.
It's been an absolute privilege to work for Calcasieu Parish, and I appreciate each and every one of you. I have never worked under leadership that actually was a team, and Alan has really made this a team. Some of the finest people that I've ever met in my life I've met here, and I've lived halfway around the world in Europe and back, and these are some of the finest people, and I'm going to miss each and every one of you, and were it not for my mother, I wouldn't be leaving you. But I thank you for everything. It's been a wonderful experience, and I've learned a lot too. Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Rita, before you go, there's a couple jurors that want to have some comments and everything, but I just want to say one thing to you, is that when I first met you, I knew we had the right person for the job. It's just was your demeanor and how you carried yourself. And I know there was times when I called you, it was pretty late, and somehow it got taken care of. And that's what I'm going to miss more so than anything, Rita, because of your passion for what you do and how you communicated with people that you had met for the very first time here in Calcasieu Parish. And we truly are going to miss you, Miss Rita. But I have a few jurors that want to comment. I'll turn it over to Mr. McMillan.
Thank you. Rita, you have set the bar high. There is no doubt the next person we hire for this job is going to have to be a tremendous person to follow in your footsteps, because you've done a great job in what you've done. I can tell you that basically we had your cell phone number, and one cell phone call to you would solve any problems that I had in this parish. You would call those people directly. I knew if I would get their number, I could get you and them connected. We were going to solve the problem. Not only are you an animal person that did great things for the animals and a lot of adoptions, but you're a people person that took care of our constituents. And I can't thank you enough for what you did. We're going to be missing you, and hopefully you'll come back and visit. Thank you for what you've done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Giddens.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. Mr. Brain.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rita, same. I echo Mr. McMillan. You just did a great job. You were always there for me, 24 hours a day. I just thought I knew a lot about animals and how the department was ran, but you taught me a lot, and I just thank you for that. And you are going to be missed.
Thank you.
So, good job and good luck where you're going.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brain. Mr. Scott.
Yeah, Miss Rita, you know, I don't really have enough words to say how much you've helped me through the past 2.5 years. I know I was probably a pet project, if you'd say in the beginning.
Just for a short while.
Yeah. Did you say a short thing? So, but I wanted to thank you very much. And, you know, as far as an asset goes to the parish, you know, I think we're going to miss you terribly. You know, not only did you answer the phone, but you would personally come out and check on things and do things. So I just appreciated you getting out there and getting your hands dirty in your job. And I'm going to just tell you, your mother must be very special to want to leave us.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Mr. Size.
Thank you, sir. Yes, Ms. Rita, just like I told you outside when we talked out there, it really was a pleasure, also myself, just like my colleague said, of working with you. And like I said, the cell phone number, anytime I needed to call, I called you, and, you know, and I could consider it was taken care of, because you did a great job. You followed up on it. Not only that, but you called me back, and you also kept me informed of, you know, so many different times. So it's been a pleasure working with you, and you're going to really be missed. And good luck to you also.
Thank you, Mr. Size. Mr. Spell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ms. Rita, it's been a pleasure working with you. Always professional, always courteous, always eager to accommodate. Just kind demeanor, warm heart. Our prayers are with you and your family. We wish you Godspeed, and you will be missed a great deal. So thank you for your service to Calcasieu Parish.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spell. And again, Miss Rita, we love you, and we're going to show you that tonight.
Thank you so much, guys. You're wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Rita. Moving on to item number 5. Take appropriate actions on applications for liquor and beer permits. Mr. Vickers.
Mr. President, we have 6 applications, and we recommend they all be
Oh.
approved.
I have a motion by Ms. Griffin and a second by Mr. Collins. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 5 passes. Item number 6, consideration approval of all payments of all
Move on
current
six.
invoices. I have a motion by Mr. Andrew Point and a second by Mr. Scott. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 6 passes. Item number 7.
Move on, seven.
Consideration approval of the minutes of the regular police jury meeting, July jury meeting dated October 21st, 2010. I have a motion by Mr. Brame and a second by Mr. Stelly. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 7 passes. Item number 8, consideration approval of the nuisance wildlife ad hoc committee report dated November 8th, 2010. I think Mr. Landry chaired that meeting. Mr. Landry, I'll turn it over to you if you have
Yes,
some
I did,
comments on that
Mr.
meeting.
President. The comments will be fairly brief. Not unlike the meeting, it went on for quite some time, and I wish I could report to y'all that we solved the problem, but we have not yet. Have another meeting scheduled for Tuesday night. I think one thing we did decide is that we need to get more education out there to the people of the parish, not leaving food out and different things like that, and of course not leaving a pet outside unattended. And there's a number of things that can be done that will cost zero to make the situation a lot better than it is. But there's still a lot of unanswered questions of how we're going to deal with it, and hopefully Tuesday night we will be able to have those answers and be able to report back at the next meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Landry. Is there any questions by the jury? At this time, the chair would entertain a motion also on
So
this.
moved.
I have a motion by Dr. Mackey and a second by Mr. McMillan. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 8 passes. Item number 9, consideration approval of the Budget Committee report dated November 18th, 2010. Mr. McMillan.
Thank you, Mr. President. We had our administrative presentation of the parish's fiscal year 2011. Mr. Beam gave us that presentation at the Budget Committee meeting, and then we had some other items. One was, item 4 was consider making a recommendation with reference to approving request and reallocation of previous awarded grant funding for Waterworks District 14, Award 5 of the amount of $59,875. All these items passed unanimously. Item 5 was consideration making a recommendation reference of approving grant amount of $26,000 for budget overruns for Waterworks District 14, Award 5, Starks District. Consideration of item 6, consideration of making a recommendation with reference approving a request grant funding and $20,000 for floor renovations to the Recreation Center for Community Center Playground District 1 of Ward 6. Item 7 was consideration of making a recommendation with reference of approving a grant of $5,000 to Care Help of Sulphur for Christmas food baskets. My motion is all those were passed unanimously by the committee, and I need a second.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. McMillan and a second by Dr. Mackey. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 9 passes. Item number 10, consideration of approving the General Insurance Committee report dated November 18, 2010. Ms. Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. President, and to the jury. The General Insurance Committee met this afternoon, and these are the plan recommendations that we would like to present to the jury for the 211 insurance. Accept benefit management service contract, renew our contract with Sterling Wellness to manage the wellness program, and accept the MetLife contract extension for 2013. The committee recommends that these recommendations be accepted.
I have a motion by Ms. Griffin and a second by Vice President Fordham. Is there any discussion?
Question
We have a question. Mr. Andrew Point.
directed to Mrs. Griffin, Chairman of the committee.
Yes, you may.
How soon is that going to, when do we go into effect with the new insurance company?
Mr. Milner will be able to.
Well, these going into effect January 1st.
January 1st?
Right.
Okay.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you, Ms.
Griffin. Thank you, Ms. Griffin.
Thank
This time I call on my parish administrator, Mr. Beam.
Thank you, Mr. Guidry. I apologize for having to go back to the Budget Committee. I just wanted to add on to Mr. McMillan's report. I forgot to mention in the presentation that we are going to be looking at alternatives for family court needs. That's very important. You know, there's not a bond issue or anything planned, but it is a pressing need, and we've heard from a lot of you about that. And so just want to make sure we present that to you, that that's going to be an important focus in 2011 of trying to solve some of those issues that they have.
Thank you, Mr. Beam. I had a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 10 passes. Item number 11, consideration of adopting a resolution indicating no objection to the following proposed projects in Calcasieu Parish.
Move on 11.
Blake Adams. Thank you, Ms.
Second.
Andrew. Proposal of Blake Adams to install approximately 84 linear feet of categoric bulkhead placed 80 cubic yards of haul-in earthen material and backfill and install a covered boathouse and wharf. I had a motion by Mr. Andrew Point and a second by Ms. Griffin. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 11 passes. Item number 12, consideration of adopting a resolution accepting the coastal zone boundary change as requested by the Department of Natural Resources, which will extend the existing coastal zone for Calcasieu Parish approximately 4 miles north from the existing boundaries to the eastern boundaries of Gulf Highway, subject to final approval by the Louisiana Legislature. I have discussion on this item. At this time, I would call on my first speaker, Mr. Hassan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe Ms. Mattingly is going to do a little presentation. I just wanted to mention we did have a meeting, was set up at my request from the last police jury meeting with majority of the landowners of that area. I think what we had represented about 85 to 90% of the landowners of the area that's being affected. I was the only juror that was at that meeting, but some of those landowners are here tonight to discuss their objection to moving this boundary either 4 or 5 miles north. So after she does her presentation, I believe we have some blue cards. I'd like for them to be heard also.
Thank you, Mr. Hassan. Ms. Mattingly, please state your name and department here with the parish, please.
Gail Mattingly, Coastal Zone Administrator for Calcasieu Parish Planning Office. A few weeks ago, I came before y'all to present the plan that the parish is proposing for our recommendation to the State Department of Natural Resources. And I wanted to give y'all time to review it and also time for the public to be able to give us comments. And so we're back here before you take any action, get that time before you take any action. And just to kind of brief, because I know a few of you were not here the last time, but the coastal zone was basically established back in the 70s by the state. And the parish has been managing the coastal zone. And our coastal zone is the bottom area. If you go to the next slide, Tom, which is the narrow area on the south, which goes from the Texas line to the Big Lake Road area around LNG plant, following the Intercoastal Waterway. That's what the coastal zone consists of right now today. And the state came to the parish a few months ago, and basically they have completed a study, a science-based study of expanding the coastal zone statewide. So they came to the parish asking us what our input would be about the proposed expansion. And they also intend to take this recommendation to the state legislative session for 2011 to vote on it. So we have come together to look at what we would like to propose to the state, as opposed to what they're going to present to us. They presented to us. The next slide. This is what we're proposing, which is basically 4 miles north of the existing coastal zone right now, 4 miles north of the Intercoastal Waterway. And then the next one is showing, I'm sorry, I had it backwards. The first one was showing the states, which was actually 5 miles north of the Intercoastal Waterway. And we're proposing to only go 4 miles north of the Intercoastal Waterway. Okay. The parish is proposing the expansion for the 4 miles north of the Intercoastal Waterway. We've had discussions with many of the stakeholders in the area, which, as Ellis had mentioned, about the large landowners. We've met with the ports, the airports, the industries, and just to get public input from them, we also did a 30-day comment period to allow for input, which we did receive one written comment, and the rest of them have been verbal comments from the groups that we have met from. The parish, just to kind of give you an idea of what we do in the coastal zone, the parish has received $8.4 million in grant funds for coastal restoration projects. And Tom, if you go to the next slide, keep going. The next, not the PowerPoint, but the PDF. Keep going. One more. It's not on that. It's not on that PowerPoint. It's on the next attachment. Okay. There's 6 coastal restoration projects that the parish is currently working on right now with the money that we have received. And just to kind of give you a clear breakdown, this is showing in the parish where they're located, and they're basically all on the Intercoastal Waterway and the southern part of there. And these projects consist of levee restorations, putting rock along the Intercoastal Waterway. They involve many of the landowners that we have discussed with about as far as it's on their property. They are the recipients of these improvements that we're doing on their properties. And one of the properties is the Intercoastal Park, the Parish Intercoastal Park, and then another property is owned by the state, which is Rabbit Island. To also tell you that many of the activities that occur in this coastal zone right now that the people are wanting to do are exempt from coastal use permits, such as agricultural, farming, hunting, wildlife preserves. Those kind of things are already exempt from coastal use permitting. The state is also proposing an intergovernmental agent coordination zone. Tom, if you could go back just a few on the PowerPoint, the intergovernmental coordination zone. This is something brand new. There you go. All that pink area, which basically takes in almost all of Calcasieu Parish, goes all the way up to Quincy, as you can see, all that pink area. This area has not really been defined by the state, and so the parish does not feel that we can support this intergovernmental coordination zone because we do not know what their criteria is for what that review process will be for that area. The staff has looked over all this, and we're basically recommending that a resolution be recommended to the Department of Natural Resources that the Calcasieu Parish coastal zone boundary be expanded as we are proposed in the parish boundary, and we cannot support the intergovernmental coordination boundary because it's not been well defined yet. That's it.
That's it, Ms. Manley. I'm sorry. We do have some discussion. Mr. Hassan.
Yes. I'd just like to ask a question. Where Global Industries is located, they're on the north side of the coastal zone. What would have been the hurdles that development would have had to have gone through if they would have been in a coastal zone?
Most of these activities, one that you're speaking of, would not be exempt from Corps of Engineers permitting, which is the big permit that you have to get whenever you do coastal projects or those type of projects in the in whatever zone, whether it's a coastal zone or not. They would still have to get a Corps of Engineers permit. The additional layer they would have to get would be a coastal use permit, which is here at the local level, that would have to be issued. So that would be the additional step that would have to be taken to do that type of project.
Do you have anything to tell us as far as how long that process is, how expensive that process is?
When someone makes an application to do development, they make a joint application to the Corps of Engineers and the state for a coastal use permit. And if it's at the local level, if it's a local use, we review it here locally and we give our comments. So the additional time that would be needed would be a 30-day comment period, which we require the police jury to approve that. So that would be the additional time factor involved to issue a permit.
Okay.
Oh, and you asked about the cost?
Yes.
There's a $100 fee for that.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion on this, but I'd first like to hear from the people that are.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hassan. This time I'll go to Mr. Scott.
Yeah, Ms. Manley, when we spoke of this, a lot of times we spoke about roads instead of 4 miles. Can you give us a brief where these roads are? So it's going to bring it to the public's attention a lot easier than 4 miles north.
The 5 miles, which is what the state's proposing, is at the Highway 108, State Highway 108, the highway that runs along, it goes east and west. And they brought it all the way to the Gulf Highway. That's kind of where they're proposing. We've looked at the storm surge area for this particular area. We felt that it's a little bit lower than that area. So we only brought it to the 4 miles north of the Intercoastal Waterway, and then we also followed the natural water bodies, the Shoe Peak Bayou, along down to the Intercoastal Waterway, so we could manage those areas by those natural delineations.
In South Lake Charles, let's move on this side of the river. Where are we talking about road-wise in South Lake Charles?
The eastern boundary would be Gulf Highway,
Okay, what's the southern boundary?
the
What's the-
Calcasieu-Cameron line,
Okay, so
which is
the,
where it is right now.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Mr. Landry.
Just to kind of give you an idea, the coastal zone is only like a half a mile wide for the most part, except when you get to right around LNG.
You have the floor, Mr. Landry.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, back to the meeting. I was not aware of a meeting a couple of weeks ago. How, were we sent emails or fax or
The meeting
that
with,
Mr. Hassan attended?
that we had with some of the large landowners.
Right.
We were given a list of some of the large landowners at Mr. Ellis's request, and we sent out to ask them to come and give us their their
I
input.
guess Mr. Ellis didn't invite me.
I think,
Okay,
May I comment?
I'm just messing with you. Okay, anyway, I wasn't aware. That's the first thing. This has just been thrown at us a few weeks ago. I'm still kind of learning about what's going on here. What's the negative impact of being if I'm a landowner, of being in that zone, and then now we're increasing the zone, so now more property, or maybe I didn't have any property in that zone, and now I'm going to have. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? I mean, I understand the 30-day period, but perhaps that could run concurrent with some
Right.
part of the other part of the process of getting other permits, so it may not really add a lot of time, but
Well, it would add the additional 30 days, and then you'd have to, of course, secure a coastal use permit, which you would not have to do right now if you're not in the coastal zone.
I mean, you mentioned earlier that's, I guess one of the good things is that you can get some grants that would be available if you have property in that area to do some of the things that you mentioned earlier, but, I mean, there has to be a negative. I'm ready for the negative. There has to be something not good about this, and obviously, you know, the other part, you talked about going up to DeQuincy. Earlier, and a few weeks ago, y'all couldn't even really tell us the impact or what's going to happen.
In the
And of
intergovernmental-
course, that's why you're recommending to
Not support that portion.
exactly. So, I mean, which I don't understand. Why would they present things to us and they themselves cannot explain to us what it means or what impact it's going to have? That doesn't make any sense. So, can you explain what negative impact it's going to have by increasing that if I'm a property owner in that area?
As a property owner, I think it would cost you more for your permit,
The $100.
$100.
Right.
And it would cost you more time, the additional comment period time. That is the only extra that I see as of right now, that we do for properties that are not in the coastal zone as compared to ones that are in the coastal zone.
I don't know. Something tells me it's not going to be that simple. But anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Landry. Mr. McMillan.
Thank you. Basically, what we're looking at is the federal government and kind of more bureaucracy for Calcasieu Parish. Maybe they're saying, hey, do this and you have a chance at some grants. But there's going to be another layer of bureaucracy in filling out permits and core permits. And believe me, I know from High Hope Road, it's taken a long time to get a core permit. They don't work at the speed of light. They work slower than government at times. So this is going to be a hindrance to development in those parts. And the other thing is this has to be ratified by the state. The federal is sending it to us, and we're looking at it and saying, well, we could live with this or we couldn't live with this. And then we send it to the state, and then they send it back to the federal government. Is that correct?
Well, actually, the funding comes from the federal government for these type of projects, but it's a state law that's not mandated by the federal government.
Okay, so I just want to kind of the protocol of what we're doing. If we had a no vote here tonight, then the state takes that no vote and says, well, look, Calcasieu Parish doesn't really want this. They turned it down. So at that point in time, the folks that don't want this in the area to be involved, and we come from those landowners then lobbying the state senators and representatives to say, hey, this isn't a good thing for us. We don't want it. Is that correct?
Yes, ultimately, the delegation or the Louisiana legislature will make the decision on where the coastal zone boundary will be.
Okay, so we're just kind of giving our opinion on whether we would like for it to happen or not. Now, let's a little more questioning. if we don't do anything, and when we say no and we send it to the state, what are some of the ramifications that can happen on behalf of this from the federal government as it gets a little further along the line? What can happen?
If we don't take their recommendation, or I mean, if we want to keep it where it is right now, the existing zones that you're
Yes,
asking on,
yeah.
I feel that since they have done this study to come up with these new boundary, they are going to enact a new boundary along the statewide. And if we don't give them what we recommend, then we're not going to have any input. So they're going to end up going with something that they want to put on there, which would be more than what we have today.
And when you say they, what they is that?
State Department of Natural Resources.
Okay, State Department of Natural Resources. I want to get straight on that. It's not federal. It's state. Department of Natural Resources. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Guidry.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. Mr. Brain.
He basically asked my question. Pam, if we send a resolution, though, to the state saying that we wanted to leave it where it was, to the state legislatures, would that make, I mean, would that place some type of
Well, I think they would certainly accept it, but I don't feel that they're going to end up enacting that because they've spent this time and money to go do this study, determining on all these studies and hydrological information to come up with this new zone, and they're going to end up expanding it to what degree at this point. That's why they're asking us for our input, because they feel that we know our area better than they do.
Well, it seems like they would have came to us first before they went and spent all the money and so forth on this, and then now we're here to vote on it tonight, and
Well, actually, I'm surprised they came to us at all.
I don't know. There's so many unanswered questions that that I just don't see that they're coming to us and want us to change it. But I just as soon leave it where it is because I don't want it to affect any, unless it has some really good benefits. But if we go in
this
and
involves 19 parishes, and so they are looking at it statewide. And of course, in the eastern part of the state, they are going to actually enlarge the coastal zone much more than they're in our area. And so they wanted to make sure those areas are really that are in the coastal area should really be considered in the coastal zone. So they've looked at it as a statewide approach.
Thank you, Mr. Brain. This time I call on Ms. Trimmy.
Thank you. One of the things that I'm just kind of going through things in my head because I don't really haven't been in the loop for a while. But the question is, the head of Natural Resources, the Department of Natural Resources, has been the lieutenant governor. Okay, ever since Mitch got voted as mayor of New Orleans, all right? So he has been doing something else. So whoever has been directing the Department of Natural Resources hadn't been the director, okay? He has been the lieutenant governor. So what I would like to do is, because there's a dysfunction going on in state government, that's a dysfunction when you don't have the head man there to direct the path. So I feel like that they're forcing us to make a decision that not even top people in their whatever kind of study they did. They do studies all the time. Most of them aren't worth nothing. That's just to pay salaries. It's just for keep somebody on staff and pay salaries. That's what state government's all about. Y'all just have to go look and it's at zero. So what I'm saying is that I don't think they should be coming to us right now on this, that we should be going to them, that we should have a delegation appointed by our president to go to the Department of Natural Resources, tell them our concerns. Also, I wouldn't mind having a resolution passed tonight because there's members from every district in the state of Louisiana on the Louisiana Police Jury Executive Board. And it's it's 25 members from the state of Louisiana, and they come from all along the Gulf, all the way up. And I think that I'd like to pass a resolution that the Louisiana Police Jury Association Executive Board take a look at this and see if the other 19 parishes that they're trying to force this down are happy or not happy. Because what we do tonight is going to affect 18 other parishes. And I don't want to be the one to be directing something to 18 other parishes that they don't want either. So we're sitting here not knowing whether they want this or don't.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't even have the head of natural resources. He's just now getting back to work. So, so what I'd like to do is make a motion to pass a resolution with all of these details in it and send it to the Louisiana Police Jury Association Executive Board and ask the state police jury, the Louisiana State Police Jury Association to look into this before we step out and do anything that that could get sticky down the road and hurt landowners. And I'm not in it for hurting landowners. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
I'll
Chairman.
second
I'll
that
come back to you on
motion.
I did make that in a motion.
I'll second that motion.
I have a motion and a second. At this time, I'll go to Mr. Andrew Point.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me preface by saying that I agree with Mr. Hassan, Mr. Landry, and Mrs. Trimmy. Did you say anything?
I guess not.
I'll pick it.
We don't agree with you.
Hey,
I think if this was such a good plan, we wouldn't have the number of large landowners being opposed to this recommendation. And they are here tonight. Some of them are. And, Mr. President, I would encourage you, when the discussion from the round table here is over, that we hear from these people and let us know exactly why they are opposed to this recommendation. I rest my case.
Thank you, Mr. Andrew Point. This time I call on Mr. Scott.
Yeah, Ms. Mattingly, you said the legislature is going to vote on this, the state. What is it going to profit the rest of the state to want to vote for the DNR? Why would they even want to? I mean, what are they going to gain out of this? There's obviously, this is all about money, and I think the federal government is in somewhere along here because they funnel the money down. You ain't going to get no more government money unless you move your line up. So you, as a Department of Natural Resources, need to move that line up. Now, whether it's in writing or something, I don't understand why the rest of the state would even be concerned with voting on that when it's 19 parishes that are going to take the brunt of this. And I don't know if you want to speak to that or whatever, but I do think our Police Jury Association really needs to get involved in this so we can see where it is. But this is just more government whenever the people are over and over again saying no more government. And I think in this parish we do a good job of building the requirements and permitting and trying to do the right thing. So to have more bureaucracy shoved down our throat, it's ridiculous. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. This time I call on Mr. Hassan.
Mr. President, I think having them come up and speak right now will answer a lot of these questions.
Okay. My first speaker on this evening for item number 12 would be Mr. Claude Buddy Leach. Please come forward. State your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I assume that I'm first because I'm the oldest. Appreciate the acknowledgement.
Quite welcome, Mr. Leach.
My name is Claude Buddy Leach. My address is 4444 Prian Lake Road, Lake Charles, Louisiana. I know that you men and ladies have a long agenda. You've been through a great deal of it. I'm very impressed, Mr. President, with the way you can move this jury. I think you have really got them shaped in line, and it must be very...
You know I'm going to hear this after the meeting, though. You do know that.
I do. I'm trying to set you up for it. Quite seriously, and get on to business here very quickly. Our family and our companies have been very blessed with ownership of land for many years. Fifth generation now responsible and stewards of land. That certainly is on the coast in Cameron. Is also the Calcasieu Parish wetlands, and we certainly adhere to regulations. In fact, we go beyond that. We had a great deal of our marsh destroyed by operations of a energy company whose name I won't mention. And after having to actually file a lawsuit, we were given funds that could have been given back to the company or put into coastal restoration. Our family decided to put it into coastal restoration, but I got ahead of myself. Do you know, gentlemen, that we applied for a permit by a certified marsh engineer in Louisiana with a plan approved by all the local entities in Cameron Parish? And we waited over 3 years, and guess what? There was a little hurricane called Rita came along and destroyed what we were going to try to refurbish to restore land. This was a Corps of Engineers. This wasn't Cameron Parish or Calcasieu Parish. So when the young lady was here, and I certainly respect the work they do, you want some downside? Well, you better start talking about how long it takes to get a permit. Locally, you can do it. But when you start asking for a change or something of that nature, it's going to go through the state to the federal government, and you're going to be facing the Corps of Engineers. If you're fortunate enough to be across the Sabine River and in the Galveston district, then you get timely action. If you're over here and have to go to New Orleans, our Senator Landrieu has changed that general down there 2 or 3 times and still doesn't have anyone that can get any kind of timely action out of the Corps. And I know I'm speaking when perhaps I should be listening, but I do drink coffee rather than tea. I just wanted to say that this is another layer of regulation on land that I have yet to understand why they want to extend it here. Now, if you're talking about the eastern side of the state, you gentlemen and ladies know what's east of us with their Chaffly. If they need to extend into that, if they need to go into Iberia Parish, Iberville, all right. But we're over here with some highlands. Why did they come over here? You talk about cost. When you apply for one of your permits, $100. That's not bad. We can borrow that from the children if we have to. But your mitigation fees, my young man, when you have to start buying mitigation rights and paying for those to do something on your own property, it gets a little hard when you're also paying property tax. But you do that if you want to have any changes. I'm quite serious. I know I'm being a little facetious here on some of it, but what really disturbed me and the reason why I came up here tonight, we're very fortunate in having a young man who trained in one of the federal agencies to come work with us for quite a few years now, and probably has kept me out of the penitentiary. But his background in NRCS has certainly given me a more scientific background on what this coastal zone management and all these reasons are. I actually had the ignorance to cut some tallow trees one time to clear a pasture, and do you know I got cited because we cut tallow trees? I didn't know you couldn't cut tallow trees on your own property, but you can if you're in a coastal zone. But that was just a long time ago. I'm very serious about the cost, the permits, and the time. You want to do something on your own property, you count 3 to 5 years. Now, I know that's worst case scenario, and it's not the locals' fault, so don't misinterpret this. But do not think the problems are going to stop here in Calcasieu Parish when you have to go to the state. Now, let's get to the state for a moment. And Department of Natural Resources. One of your jurors that I have met before mentioned the fact that they haven't had a chairman of Natural Resources. But I'm quoting from what they have printed to encourage the passage of this, stating that while the report provides a framework for establishing an expanded coastal zone with hierarchical management, changes in state law would be required for implementation. New statutes would be needed to be adopted to create and to establish the CUP and IGC areas. These statutes should include a description and purpose of these 2 management areas. Now, they say that's got to be passed later. You don't know what you're passing here tonight, if you passed it. Look, I want our coast preserved, and I want us to all work together to have the best environment for our children and grandchildren and future generations. But show me the reason for in putting more regulations on private-owned property. They're forcing me to start looking at drinking tea instead of coffee. We have enough regulations, and I think most of your larger people who have the responsibility of managing land try to certainly adhere to them. I think you'll find that most of us are very good stewards of land because it's a privilege, and we understand that. But find out what the cost is going to be. That was a good question. Find out how long it's going to be. And then find out when you do hit the core and you have used Louisiana certified engineers and have all the approval of local government down in Cameron Parish, and then take over 3 to 5 years because a young lady on the Corps of Engineer panel who was a biologist said our engineer had the levees too broad on our own land with our own money, no federal money, no other land. The base of the levees were too broad and would displace some more wetlands. And the engineer said, Miss So-and-so, you remember that project you approved 2 years ago? Oh, yes. Well, you can't find the levees because they were too narrow. That's the sort of thing you deal with when you go to get these federal permits. And you can't get help. It's a bureaucracy, and I'm telling you, it is out of control, and it makes you wonder sometimes if we're still in the United States of America. And I still drink coffee. But we'll close by saying, gentlemen and ladies, I do not know. I think one very significant motion was made to have your state association look into this before you take action, because when Calcasieu passes it, it leads a domino effect. It may be passed, it may be enforced upon us as stated by our local representative. But I would let them force it on us. I would also talk to the legislators who allegedly are going to have to decide what is a CUP area and what is an IGS area and how they're going to describe this and what's the purpose of the management areas. And also to review existing statutes to find out the use of the term coastal zone. Now, isn't that something? They want you to pass something tonight to tie up some more land, and they don't know what it's going to be yet. Thank you for the time. I didn't mean to ramble as much, Mr. President. You should have called my hand. You normally do.
I thought you did a great job, Mr. Leach.
But I'm very serious. If there's something we can do to help improve Calcasieu Parish, we're going to do it. At the same time, we think that we need to be reasonable in what we bring on ourselves. If the science is there, let them show the science, where this is going to prevent erosion up to Vernon Parish. Now, I got to protect Vernon Parish because that's my home, and that's where we grow pine trees. But if this will protect Vernon Parish, so be it. I'm being facetious again. Quite candidly, gentlemen and ladies, go slow as you are doing. Get as much information as you possibly can before you approve what's being asked for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leach. At this time, I would call on Mr. David Richard as our second speaker on this evening. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record, please.
So, Mr. Leach, you must have called me because I'm the second oldest, Mr. Guidry. My name David Richard. I'm here tonight representing the Stream family. Our physical address at our office is 2417 Shell Beach Drive, Lake Charles. Mr. Scott, you had a really good point in regard to where is this coming from? It seems to be a study that was funded by the federal government, and then the state contracted out the study in regard to the expansion of the coastal zone. It is undoubtedly an expansion of those powers, an expansion of the bureaucracy, and it's going to be a report that's presented to the legislature. Now, what was presented to Calcasieu Parish was a map that included most of the estuaries all the way up to Lake Charles itself. All right, all of the areas that are in that waterway were proposed. Your planning staff, as was told to us when we had our meeting with the large landowners with the planning staff, met with industry, and industry says, we don't want any more regulation on the areas adjacent to our area. So that area was deleted. So we have a meeting with the planning staff, and I want to tell you I appreciate meeting with the planning staff in regard to the expansion as it's modified after industry was met and said, okay, we want to compromise because we want to give the state something in regard to their proposal, okay? It was unanimous in regard to the landowners that were in attendance and with Entergy that was there also in regard to regulations. We do not need another layer of bureaucracy in those lands. Now, this intergovernmental coordination area, I do applaud planning for not adding that to the area because there are no regulations written. I mean, it affects everything in Calcasieu Parish. And the need and the positive things, I can't show you the positive things. I deal with things in the coastal zone and outside of the coastal zone every day. And in regard to the money, someone asked about money. All right, you know, if I have to mitigate, as Mr. Leach just talked about, on his own land, do I have to mitigate for the Corps? Do I also have to mitigate for coastal zone? So in that case, are you adding another mitigation layer? Yes, there are cases where that mitigation is coordinated between those two agencies, but there are cases where you will do mitigation for both bureaucratic entities. The second thing I wanted to say a little bit about is in regard to money. Pam showed you the CAP money. That's the CAP money, Calcasieu Parish, as part of the $540 million that came out of the Mineral Management Service that is being used for restoration. It does not say, it was not brought up that the amount of money that we've sent from QIPRA, we have probably garnered about, in Calcasieu Parish, in erosion control, in wetland management, over the past 15 years, another $30 or $40 million, whether we were in the coastal zone or not in the coastal zone. That money has been available to Calcasieu Parish and wetlands in Calcasieu Parish. NAWCA grants. We've had a number of NAWCA grants that are North American Wetland Conservation Act funds that we have used in Calcasieu Parish. We see it as an expansion of the zone, an expansion of bureaucracy, and I don't think that is needed in Calcasieu Parish. I guess one other point I need to make, because I love to come see y'all, but twice in 2 months is getting a little much, Mr. President, is that, you know, we had a meeting with the staff. We had a unanimous decision, a unanimous group that told your planning staff, we do not want this. Well, I should have not wasted my time if we're going to have to come up here and look at the same proposal that we saw when we were invited to go to a meeting. You know, it was clearly made that we don't want this, we don't need more bureaucracy, and I don't see the carrot. You know, we work very hard, as Mr. Leach said, as landowners, to try and be good stewards of land. And for us to think about money that's coming in 2017 and whether it's in the coastal zone or whether it's not in a coastal zone, if it's a viable wetland, to be considered for funding is beyond my comprehension, and I do not see that as a carrot of any kind. Thank you for your time. I appreciate being here, and I appreciate y'all's consideration into not supporting an expansion of the coastal zone. And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Richard. At this time, I'll call on our last speaker for item number 12 is Mr. Bart Jakobczak. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Mr. President and jurors, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Bart Jakobczak. I am here on behalf of the Lawton Companies. My office address is 1 Lakeshore Drive, Suite 1700, Lake Charles, Louisiana. And I'll be very, very brief because I'd like to first and foremost say that I echo most of all sentiments of Mr. Richard and Mr. Leach. The Lawton families and companies are against this resolution to adopt what the LDNR has proposed in moving this coastal management zone boundary. Excuse me. In addition to the things that my friends here have mentioned to you all, one of the things that I thought that stuck out in the propaganda produced by LDNR, which is in the form I have here, a printout of a sizable PowerPoint presentation, and in that PowerPoint presentation it says that one of the outcome objectives to this no doubt very expensive study was to minimize increase of the regulatory burden of the stakeholders. And you've just heard from 2 and now 3 of the largest stakeholders. The Lawton companies own several thousand acres in this area that is proposed to be extended into the coastal management zone. And other than that one sentence that's in this PowerPoint presentation, there's no data, no facts, no suggestion as to how this change would in any way minimize an increase to regulatory burden. In fact, it's the exact opposite. It will increase the regulatory burden. I certainly appreciate Ms. Trimmy's suggestion that you table the vote or not vote for it in one way in lieu of other information. But I'd ask, and if any jury member would make a resolution or propose one in the form of sending a much stronger message to LDNR and to our local delegates of the legislature, in that the parish adopt a resolution denying the coastal zone boundary change, and as requested by DNR, and supplement that with, we as a parish feel that it should not be moved at this time. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you all have any.
Thank you. This time I call on Mr. Landry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Vickers, is there a time limit on when we have to give them an answer?
I don't think it's immediate, no.
So we have time to do what Ms. Trimmy suggested?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Landry. Mr. Hassan.
I have no objection to Ms. Trimmy's motion. Since I'd like to make a motion, but since that one's on the floor, I'd like to move on that and then be recognized.
We have a motion and a second on Mrs. Trimmy. Is there any discussion?
Did I receive a second?
Yes. Me.
Madam Secretary, would you read the motion on Ms. Trimmy's behalf, please?
The motion is to adopt a resolution incorporating all the details that have been discussed and presented by the stakeholders tonight, and forward that to the Louisiana Police Jury Association Executive Board, asking them to look into it.
I have a motion and a second on Mrs. We have discussion, Mr.
I have a
Antipone.
comment to make in support of what Sandy is talking about. The executive board will be meeting the first part of December. If that item is not on the agenda, we will make sure that it is to be discussed, because we're not only affected here, but as you heard, there are another 18, 19 parishes as well, and every one is represented from here to the Mississippi line. Mm-hmm. So that being said, Sandy, it's a good move. It's very astute of you to do that, number one. But we'll make sure if you visit with Roland between now and then, you may tell him that it's an important issue that needs to be addressed by the executive board.
Thank you, Mr. Antipone. Mr. McMillan.
Thank you. And Ms. Trimmy, I respect what you want to do as far as going to the executive board, but what if the executive board come back and says this is a good thing? From what I'm heard tonight, I'm not for this.
Actually, I'm not asking them one way or the other. I want them to, because this is a statewide organization that represents the police juries all over the state of Louisiana, to do a little more detailed work that we don't have right now. And they have the staff to do it. I mean, they're our number one. They protect us. They are there to protect us, not to come back and not protect us. So they protect all police jurors in the state. So we just want to make sure right now we don't have all the answers, and even the gentlemen that were here that are the stakeholders in this and the landowners, they don't know either. So if we can dig down a little bit deeper and pull some of these layers back, I think we may get to a realization of what really is happening.
And I hear what you're saying, but I still don't know anything, a realization that they may come about that would make me change my mind with this number of landowners that own major plots of land in Calcasieu Parish, that we would vote for this. I mean, I don't see it as a good thing, and I just feel that maybe instead of doing that, we ought to send a message, a strong message.
Well, I think that's what Mr. Hassan's second motion is going to be. We're going to do an investigative for the other police drawers that are involved in this, which I'm sure is Plaquemine, and we have our next president to be is from Iberia Parish, and we have several on the executive board that are all from the southern part that are in these parishes right here, and I think they probably feel the same way we do, but at least we can, get to the devil's in the details.
Yeah, and I would say maybe we can give them a chance to join in
Exactly.
our opposition.
Join in that's what I'm trying to do.
That may
do you
be
understand?
more. I understand that. That's kind of, I want to make sure we were
There
on
you
the
go.
same line of thought with that.
There you go.
With that being said, thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. Mr. Spill.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I just want to say I'm 100% support of Ms. Tremmy's recommendation, strictly for the fact that 19 parishes will speak louder than one parish. And so I'm 100% support of that. And I would just ask if it is possible as part of our resolution that we have Mr. D'Artes come visit us and report to us on the results of their investigation. So I would like to.
I'll make that part of the resolution. He'll be happy to come.
Thank you, Ms. Tremmy.
Once they find out and dig down into this. Thank you.
I yield, Mr. President.
Very well said, Mr. Spill. Dr. Mackey.
I too think that we need a lot more information before we do anything. I did want to make one comment. I do drink green tea, and I don't know what's wrong with that, and I just want to make that as a point. Dr. Mackey. I drink caffeinated tea, green tea. Occasionally I'll drink black tea, but green tea is what I like. And right now I have no idea why that affects me worse than it would be to drink black coffee. I just don't know. Over.
Thank you, Dr. Mackey. Mr. Hassan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ms. Tremmy, just to ease Mr. McMillan's concerns, my motion was going to be, just as Bart had just mentioned, to make a recommendation to the Department of Natural Resource that no change be made, and further to make another motion that a resolution be sent to our legislative delegation. If you would like to,
I'd like to incorporate that into this resolution.
that's what I was going to ask you. Would you like to have these two motions?
Can we do that?
And then that way, that being included in your motion to the police
Well,
association.
Brian is squeamish about that.
Okay.
So
it's.
he's like this. Oh.
You've got the floor, Mr. Bean.
I think studying it more is a very good option. We're all confused by this. It's sort of been what exactly will happen. So learning more is always a good option if we're not pressed for it. But and I think it's a really good idea of Sandy's motion to find out more and probably with the unified approach from the other parishes, you learn a lot more. But if you choose to vote against doing anything, then I don't know that you need to ask the Police Jury Association to study something you've already decided on. So I guess I would say Ms. Tremmy's motion is good, and if you want to take it further, obviously that's your choice. But it might be better to try that approach first, and if it passes and you want to deny it, it just seems to conflict a little bit, I guess is what I'm saying.
It's up to you, whatever, Mr. Hassan.
That was why I was making the suggestion to see where this where my motion would fall to include in your motion, whatever we decide.
Madam Secretary, will we need to make two motions on it, or can we just go with both motions being combined into Ms. Sandy's motion?
I don't think you could go back.
Go ahead, Mr. Porter.
I think what I'm hearing right now is the fact that we just want to include the language that gives our position on this in Ms. Tremmy's motion to the state association. That's the way I'm understanding.
And I certainly have no qualms with that. Because I think that it seems like to me that there are 15 people here that are not totally understanding what the state is trying to do, and we're trying to get to the bottom of it. And we do have the Louisiana Police Jury Association is our lobbying. They do lobbying for local government, and they protect us. And that's the reason I wanted to do this, is for to get a little more information for us so that we know exactly what they're doing, and also for the other 18 or 19 parishes.
Thank you, Ms. Trimmie. I'll call on Mr. Stelly at this point.
Yeah, has anyone had the opportunity to talk to anybody from our local delegation? Where are they on this? Has anybody spoke with them?
Yes.
What is their understanding of this thing?
Well, I think they're just as confused as anybody else. It's all new to them as well. We did talk to Mr. Danahay, and we have, we've sent some other information that we have had to the delegation itself. I don't think we've had any response back from them.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Stelly. At this time, I call on legal counsel. Mr. Smith, make this all right for us.
What I'd like to suggest is that Mrs. Trimmie's, it's a resolution, and that the resolution be premised with the Calcasieu Parish Police Jury is preliminarily opposed to any such change, but is asking the Louisiana Police Jury Association to conduct a study and investigation and report back to us on what is the position of the other parishes who are most affected by it.
10-4.
Sounds good. Mr. McMillan.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
I know it.
by conveying, so
Okay,
I'm
Mr. Hass?
in agreement with that. That eases me.
Ms. Kathy, can you give that back to us one more time so we can vote on that and move on?
Yes, sir. I believe the motion is to adopt a resolution premised with the fact that the police jury is opposed to any such change, but is asking the Louisiana Police Jury Association to conduct a study and investigation and report back to the police jury on what the position of the other parishes most affected by it is.
Very good, Madam Secretary. Mr. Spell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just real quick, this has a smell of Corps engineers all over it, and I have yet to speak to anybody that does not believe that this organization has overreached its bounds and just gone way beyond its mandate. And I'm speaking in general terms here. It just seems to me that we cannot find anyone that has the ability to deflate the balloon. And I know that the Corps is probably behind all of this, and I would just, at some point in time, it would be nice to see somebody put regulations on the Corps, because it's affecting everything we do, from development to drainage districts to private property owners. And maybe this is a first step, but I just wanted to make that general statement. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Spell. We had a motion by Ms. Trimmie and a second by Mr. Brame. Is there any other discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, so move.
Mr. President.
Mr. Hassan.
At this time, I'd like to make a motion that we respond to the Department of Natural Resource with a recommendation that there be no movement of the coastal zone boundary, and further that a resolution be sent to our legislative delegation that they also vote against any movement of that boundary.
I have a motion by
Second.
Mr. Hassan.
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Brame. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, so move.
One
Mr.
final
Point.
comment, if I may.
Yes, sir.
What scares me, and you're right on target, Shannon, about the Corps of Engineers, what scares me about all of this is several years ago, and some of you were not here at the time that it happened, the railroad wanted to put a sit yard west of Sulphur. This body voted unanimously not to rezone the property. Guess what the attorney for the railroad said? We appreciate your time, but we're going to put it anyway. What scares me about all of this is, are these people who are higher than we going to do exactly what they want when the time comes? I hope we're not confronted with this, but I'm telling you, I have serious reservations about what they're going to do and what they want to do, Corps of Engineers walks on water. If you don't believe me, ask them. They will tell you they do. And it's unfortunate that we live in a society, and to quote Buddy would said a while ago, sometimes I wonder if we do live in America. Now, most of you didn't know a gentleman that lived in Sulphur. He's passed away now. And he told me one day, he said, you elected people don't do anything. The bureaucrats run this country. Whether you want to believe it or not, he is right on target. The bureaucrats run this country, unfortunately. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Andrew Point. Mr. Hassan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Vickers, do we also need to make a formal motion on the intergovernmental zone to go with staff's recommendation that we also, how did she put it, don't participate in that or don't approve that in any way?
Well, I think that it needs to be clearly defined. I certainly at this point couldn't recommend that. I would think a resolution in favor of just doing away with it entirely would be our position.
I'll make a motion to that.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Hassan and a second by Mr. McMillan. Is there any discussion? Any objection?
Can we put anything in there about not letting the bureaucrats run the?
No, that's not going to happen.
Not gonna put that in
Hey,
there.
I'm for that.
That's not going to happen. Thank you, Mr. Hassan. Is there any other discussion? Any objection? Hearing none. Moving on to item number 13, consideration of amending ordinance with reference to the following adjudicated properties as related to extending the deadlines for completion. There were 2 bullets on that item. Thank you, Mr. Andrew Point. I have a motion by Mr. Andrew Point and a second by Mr. Collins. Let me just read those 2 bullets into the record, please. Amend ordinance number 5790, ordinance number 5722, and ordinance number 5590. Allows Mr. Patrick Holmes to purchase the following described property for $4,500. I have a motion and a second on that item. Is there any discussion? Any objection? 13.2, amend ordinance number 5759 and ordinance number 5497, which allows Mr. James Ford to purchase the following described properties for $2,200. I have a motion and a second on that item. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 13 passes in all bullets. Item number 14.
We want 14 all
Consideration of rescinding ordinance and authorizing the re-advertisement of the following adjudicated properties. There were 11 bullets on that item. I had a motion by Mr. McMillan and a second by Dr. Mackey. Let me just read those into the record, please. 14.1, rescind ordinance number 5776. Excuse me, Ms. Sandy?
I have a question on one when we get to the one in
Let me know which
Tremyville.
one that is, Ms. Sandy, and I'll
One
call
in
on you.
Tremyville.
Okay.
You'll see it on there.
All right, Ms. Sandy.
What Mark called
And
it.
ordinance number 5354, which allows Ms. Gilda Marie Jones to purchase the following described property for $7,800. 14.2, rescind ordinance number 5763 and ordinance number 5250, which allows Mr. Robert Lynn Lewis to purchase the following described property for $16,000. 14.3, rescind ordinance number 5761 and ordinance number 5349, which allows Mr. Robert Colston Jr. to purchase the following described property for $4,500. 14.4, rescind ordinance number 5762, ordinance number 5361, and ordinance number 501. Allows Ms. Connie Ann Bass Savoy to purchase the following described property for $6,700. 14.5, rescind ordinance number 5764 and ordinance number 5227, which allows Mr. Richard Nathan Richard to purchase the following described property for $1,400. 14.6.
That's it, though. That's the one.
14.6.
No, 14.5 is in Tremyville.
Okay, Ms. Trimmy, go ahead.
McMurray calls it.
Go ahead, Ms. Trimmy. You have the floor.
The motion was fine. I don't
Okay.
have any problem with that. What I need to ask our investigative arm of our planning department, Jimmy, is it looks like this property is on the corner of Malone Road and Highway 12. Okay, or Old Evangeline Highway, or what do you want to call it? Okay, where this property is in my olden days, I've been there a long time, this was an old filling station. On this property right here, has it been investigated? There are tanks under this property. And that is why people are backing out from purchasing it, because there are gas tanks under this property. And right now, there are 18-wheelers that are parking, 18-wheeler, parking on this property because they live somewhere else, and they're parking their 18-wheeler on top of this property, which is parish property as it stands today. And we have some liability on this particular piece of property, and I'd like for our, not only our staff, but our legal people to see exactly what we got there before we actually put this back up on the market.
Okay. Well, first of all, we don't have any title to this property. Basically, what occurs is we are in possession of it, but we do not hold title. Now, the legislature has made it to where we can produce title to somebody if we want to. We have chose not to do that. All our sales are non-warranty. You buy them at your own risk.
So they're just paying the taxes off. Is that right?
Well, basically, you know, once the property would be re-advertised, then it could be, it could possibly be rebid again. Now, obviously, if it's got tanks on it and everything, and I'm not familiar
I'm not
with this
saying it for a fact, but I do know what was there 50 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's probably still there.
I don't think I saw them ever taken out. But.
Right. I mean, knowing that now, I think that we'd have to kind of go back and maybe take it off and just look at it. For one thing for sure, the police jury is not going to take on the liability of pulling those tanks out
No,
and so
but
forth.
we have to make people aware once we find out if that is the case.
Yes, I think that that would be only fair.
Otherwise, we're not giving fair warning to somebody that bids on this property.
And even though it's non-warranty, I think we'd want to do that anyway and tell them, say, look at some tanks under here.
But be buyer beware.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I want to do.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Trimmy. Thank you, Mr. Vickers. Mr. Landry.
She covered what I was going to.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Landry. Moving on to 14.6, ordinance number 5718 and ordinance number 5352, which allows Mr. Rashawn Ali Duke to purchase the following described property for $2,200. 14.7, rescind ordinance number 5714, ordinance number 5625, ordinance number 5400, which allows Ms. Yolanda Landry to purchase the following described property for $700. 14.8, rescind ordinance number 5448, which allows Mr. Albert Bobby King to purchase the following described property for $100. 14.9, rescind ordinance number 5697 and ordinance number 5320, which allows Mr. Robert Celestine to purchase the following described property for $1,800. 14.10, rescind ordinance number 5760 and ordinance number 5528, which allows Sonia Petroleum to purchase the following described property for $1,100. 14.11, rescind ordinance number 5775 and ordinance number 5530, which allows Sonia Petroleum to purchase the following described property for $900. I had a motion and a second on all bullets. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none. Number 14, and all bullets pass. Number 15, consideration of rescinding ordinance number 5837 and ordinance number 5769 and ordinance number 5549, which allows Mr. Charles Strong to purchase the following described property for $1,800. I have a motion by Mr. Andrew and a second by Mr. Porter. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none. Item number 15 passes. Item number 16, consideration of ratifying the issuance and execution by the President of the Police Jury to revocation of restriction associated with drought conditions signed on Thursday, November 11, 2010, revoking the restrictions which was established for outdoor burning activities during the drought conditions. I have a motion by Mr. Size and a second by Mr. Stelly. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none. Item number 16 passes. Item number 17, consideration of adopting a resolution requesting that the Calcasieu Legislative Delegation diligently pursue capital outlay funding during the next fiscal budget session for the Louisiana Highway 378 expansion project between Westlake and Moss Bluff. We have discussion. Mr. Spell.
Mr. President, I would like to move to adopt, but I'd just like to add that we request that it be copied to the governor's office as well.
Thank you, Mr. Spell. Is there any discussion, Mr. McMillan?
Yes, we have a speaker on that item, I think, would like to speak.
Would Mr. Mark Pardon please come to the mic, please?
And,
Please state your name and address for the record.
Before you start speaking, I don't know if y'all saw the report that they had on KPLC about the bridge condition, but Mark has kind of helped to bring that to light, and the pilings underneath that bridge look to be in pretty bad shape. Hopefully the state Department of Transportation is checking into that for us to make sure it is safe to go across that bridge. Anything we could do to get another bridge, to get it 5-lane between Westlake and Moss Bluff would be tremendous asset for our community to kind of help make a north loop around that way. So that's something that's well needed. Shannon, I appreciate you putting this on the agenda, and I hope we can get some money for this opportunity. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan.
Mark Parham, 3065 Old Town Road, Lake Charles. First off, Mr. Spell, I'd like to thank him for everything he's done on this effort for the last 2 years. I'm behind Mr. Brett Guyman. Unless any of you have spent any time in a boat or went underneath that bridge and looked, the pictures don't do it justice. So myself, I'm a board member of the Tea Party. It's a shame Mr. Leach left. I do drink my coffee, but I have van loads of tea. A lot of people are behind this. We're going to get behind Mr. Guyman. We're going to push this to the state. It does have a project number. Y'all know the procedures for getting bridges built, 5 steps. It has a feasibility study done on it at a cost of $1 million. That's where it stands. Next is the environmental study. That's where the I-10 bridge stands. You've seen the number of years that's taken. That's federal funding. This is state and federal funding. We can get this project pushed through. DOT says the bridge is safe according to the number of pilings they had on that one section. This one section where the pilings are bad, again, is one section. Holds up the main superstructure. You can sit there. We sat there in the boat and watched the water ripple as cars and trucks passed over the bridge. You call it safe. I don't call it safe. I'm behind my representative to see that this gets pushed through. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you, Mr. Spell. Thank y'all for your time.
Thank you. I just have one question. I noticed I watched the little piece that was done on KPLC, and DOT said that it was actually safe for citizens to pass over the bridge and all, but if something was to happen to where that would have been some type of catastrophic accident to where some citizen here in Calcasieu Parish would lose their life, I mean, who would be totally responsible for that?
One school bus. One school bus. One car. You know, I heard something on the radio today. 1 million lives lost is lost. 1 life lost is a tragedy.
I appreciate your time, and I hope that we can move on that. And I know Mr. McMillan and Mr. Spell are doing all they can to see that this hopefully gets done, because I looked at the piece, and it was a little bit frightening when you saw the actual structures that's what's underneath that bridge.
When you sit there and you see the water ripple, I'm behind my representatives.
Thank you, Mr. Mark. I call on Mr. Spell at this time.
Thank you, Mr. President. We appreciate it when citizens get involved and bring issues to the forefront. And I just wanted to say, Mr. President, that the police jurors that represent that area, Ms. Griffin, myself, Mr. McMillan, I know that those jurors have been focused on this project before I've gotten here. And since I've become elected, it's something that I've been extremely interested in. But I just want to say I appreciate the team effort with the jurors that are interested and focused on this project, and I appreciate our citizens being involved, and hopefully everybody working together will make this thing move forward. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Spell. We had a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 17 passes. Item number 18, consideration of adopting a resolution approving an extension on the solid waste collections and disposal contract with Jim Bill Disposal and Waste Management of Louisiana, LLC, respectively, for a period of 1 year for collections and disposal service in Ward 1.
I made a motion.
I had a motion by Mrs. Trimmy and a second by Mr. Spell.
I'll second, Mr. President. I just have one comment. I would like that the terms of this extension mirror the contract terms for wards 2 through 8 as far as the time period. And we have discussed this. I'd just like to make sure that we try to have the contract terms parallel with the rest of the parish. And I know that discussion will be coming up when we receive RFPs, but that's basically it, is yes, move to approve the extension for 1 year, but also make contract times parallel to the other contracts to follow.
Thank you, Mr. Spell. Well said. I have one speaker on this item, which is 18. I'd ask to come forth at this time. Mr. Bill Pousson, please state your name and address for the record, please.
Bill Pousson, 7064 Great House Road, Lake Charles, 70607. And basically what I wanted to just say is kind of what Mrs. Spell said. We're very eager and anxious to continue doing business in Ward 1. We're very eager and anxious in doing business in Calcasieu Parish in its entirety. Again, we would like to see, when we vote on this thing in the future, for the complete parish to mirror this and make it run parallel, so we're not going back and forth, where this Ward 1 will just, whoever gets the contract will get it, the whole thing, and do it that way. Also, we'd like to, just kind of a little different deal, just consider 2 waste suppliers for the entire parish. I'd like for y'all to just take that into consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Pousson. We had a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 18 passes. Item number 19, consideration of adopting a resolution approving the request of the Board of Commissioners of Waterwork District Number 11 of Ward 4 and 7 and fixing a per diem to pay to each commissioner in the amount of $100 for each meeting attended. I had a motion by Mr. McMillan and a second by Mr. Fordham. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 19 passes. Item number 20, consideration of adopting a resolution approving a cooperative endeavor agreement between the police jury and the McNeese Foundation for 2010 Banner Series Educational Programming in Area Schools. I have a motion by Dr. Mackey and a second by Mr. McMillan. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 20 passes. Item number 21, consideration of adopting a resolution approving a servitude agreement between the police jury and Energy Gulf States Louisiana LLC for a right-of-way easement for construction and maintenance of underground electrical distribution facilities on a certain tract of land off Merganser Street near Chenault. I have a motion by Mr. Scott and a second by Mr. Stelly. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 21 passes. Item number 22, consideration of adopting a resolution authorizing the submittal of a grant application in the amount up to $69,000 to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for HCV Family Self-Sufficiency Program Coordinator salaries. I have a motion by Mr. McMillan and a second by Mr. Collins. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 23. Item number 22 passes. Item number 23, consideration of adopting a resolution authorizing the submittal of a grant application to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development under the Continuum of Care Homeless Assistance Program for additional shelter plus care vouchers and or development of one or more permanent supporting housing programs. I have a motion by Mr. McMillan and a second by Dr. Mackey. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 23 passes. Item number 24, consideration of adopting a resolution approving a memorandum of understanding between the Calcasieu Parish Consortium Workforce Investment Board and the WIA Request One-Step Partner concerning the operations of the Workforce Development System. I have a motion by Dr. Mackey and a second by Mr. Collins. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 24 passes. Item number 25, take appropriate actions on bids received by the parish purchasing agent on November 9th, 2010 for the following: concrete pipe and metal pipe with unit price effective from January 1st, 2011 until June 30th, 2011, and concrete rivet mats with unit price effective from November 19th, 2010 until September 30th, 2011. I have a motion by Mr. McMillan.
I'll second that.
And a second by Mr. Fordham. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none. Item number 25 passes. Item number 26, consideration of authorizing the parish purchasing agent to advertise for RFPs for purchase of on-site installation of a satellite communication system with voice over internet protocol telephone communication systems for use by the Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness. I have a motion by Mr. Collins and a second by Mr. Stelly. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Mr. Stelly has discussion.
He doesn't.
Mr. Stelly, doesn't have any discussion. Hearing none, item number 26 passes. Are there any other items at this time that we would like to take up? If none,
Oh, no.
if not,
I was just going to mention this, Mr.
move to
McMillan.
adjourn. I have a motion by Dr. Mackey and a second by Mr. Brain.
Mr. McMillan, what?
We're now
Birthday.
adjourned.